And as you see this, we're live. Welcome everyone again. And thanks Alex from joining us here from Barcelona. Alex is a senior PM at N26 and also has grown a very cool side project called the PM Library. And I'm sure he's going to tell us more about that. And the topic for tonight is continuous product discovery. And I think you can take it from here, Alex.
Cool, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen in a second.
So for people who joined us just now, if you have questions for Alex, please write them in the chat. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. And after we end the live streaming and the Q&A session, we will have a breakout room here on Zoom where you can hang out and have a casual conversation. Cool, so over to you, Alex.
Cool, thank you very much. So hello to everyone in Berlin and around the world. As we learned, there are also people from Islamabad here. So welcome to you as well. It was already mentioned that if you have questions or if you want to have a discussion about a specific part of the talk, feel free to put that in the comments. I'm going to read that afterwards. You will see through the presentation I'm giving more of these kind of tiles where it says it's always a question and it's the Zoom logo. So I will ask you to also participate. It's not only me telling you something, but I also want to learn something today. So I need your participation a lot, and we can have a discussion about that later on after the talk. So first of all, to get warmed up, feel free to say hi to everyone and quickly introduce yourself, like where are you currently situated? Most probably, most people are working from home due to the current situation, but I would like to be super interested from where you're currently watching. So say hi and tell us from where you're watching. Cool, so quickly, and I promise like super quickly about me. I am a product manager at N26, which is a mobile bank which operates in 25 different countries. So most of Europe and the US. And here in Barcelona, I'm mainly responsible for our memberships. So we have a freemium kind of model where we have a free account and a premium account. And together with some other PMs, I'm responsible for the tiering of those accounts, as well as the physical card experience before you in the end activate that card. So as you can see on the bottom right, for example, how you order a new card, and how this is connected to upgrading, which is my main KPI I'm looking at, but as well as retaining customers in premium. So much about me. Today, I would like to share a bit more about how we are going to, or how we are currently setting up our team for being able to run continuously product discovery. I know that there are people in Zoom at the moment who do discovery on a daily basis, probably. Some others are not completely into product discovery yet. So I will start at the very beginning and then super briefly go into very hands-on examples on what we're doing. And I hope every one of you can take one or two good ideas or things that you can try out directly tomorrow with you after the talk. Cool. So what is discovery? And like I said, we start at the very beginning, and how we see discovery, it's always like one side of doing product development. On the one hand side, you have discovery, where you mainly discuss or find out what problem you're trying to solve and how you're going to solve it. And then in the second phase, which we call delivery, you actually try to deliver on that discovered item. So the first question I'm having here is on like how many times do you think you're in discovery mode in your team, maybe yourself? Like how many times do you discover? Is it on a daily basis? Is it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? Or do you discover only once a year? Like tell us a bit about something, how you're doing it. So the delivery part of product development got quite mature over the last couple of years. So most people and most teams have these stand-ups where they meet every day. They try to work in a very agile way. They have continuous integration. They're using user story mapping to get an idea of what they need to build exactly. They write tickets in the form of stories, and they do continuous deployment to learn fast and have fast iterations. So this part of the product development journey got really mature, and most teams are already using it. On the other side, I think most of us know about all these kind of buzzwords like design thinking, and we need to experiment and ideation, lean startup, MVP, you name it. But the question is how many people and how many teams are actually doing that on a continuous basis and doing it in a way that it supports delivery rather than being like a part that you need to do before the delivery can start. So the biggest problem we're seeing is that most people think that the future is predictable, and that's why they're not investing enough in product discovery. It's expensive. They think it's something that is only then being shared between product marketing or product managers or user researchers, and is not shared with the whole team or externally in the company. But the main reason is that they think the future is predictable. And because they think that, they can time box discovery, create several weeks of a backlog or a development backlog, and then just work through that backlog, release everything, and fine. And then in the end, they come up with something we call product roadmap, a very detailed representation of what you're going to release over the next couple of months and how you're going to do that. So I think most of us have seen such a product roadmap already. But if we ask that question, how many times did we deliver exactly on time in our roadmap? And how many times did users' behavior change based on the assumptions we made via a roadmap? I think we have quite a different discussion. Because we never know. We know that the future is not predictable. Like we can't predict if the user's behavior is going to change in a very specific direction just because we launch feature X, Y, Z. And that means that product discovery in the end can also be not very linear. It's quite messy. It's quite and you will see that in the presentation later on. It can be quite messy, and it can be quite overwhelming for teams to start with. But it's not something new that we need to think in a different way, because already 2012, and that's 8 years ago, which is in software development like a long time, this guy, Marty Kagan, who some of the product people refer to as the godfather of product management, wrote not only this book Inspired, but also wrote a blog article about continuous discovery and how we need to make sure that on the one hand side, we continuously discover smaller items and then create backlog items that then we're learning something, we're developing something, we're learning something, which then goes back into the discovery cycle. So the modern way of doing product management is more in discovery continuously and writing backlog items continuously and putting something in front of users and learning with real users. So I think we all agree until here that it might make sense to run product discovery continuously, and that product roadmaps are probably a bit outdated now. And there are books about it, how you do better product roadmaps and discovery. But if you start looking for product discovery, and I just did a quick search for us on Google, it can be still quite overwhelming. Like there's so many different things that you do. For example, the double diamond principle, the lean lean canvas, and like you name it, we have so many different things. So when I started with doing more product discovery, I thought about, okay, what do I want to use? What could help me in my daily life to structure product discovery and make it effective? So the next question you see on the top right, where I would like to get your opinion, is if you have any favorite frameworks, if you have methods for discovery that you're using, and they might be perfect, they might work quite well for you. So I want to hear about it, and maybe also you can share it with the other people in the Zoom call. So going back to my journey on how I then started with getting product discovery in a more structured way, I just started on the top left. Might make sense. Just start at the first result, and that's a picture of opportunity solution trees. And if you don't know her yet, Teresa Torres, who also has a really good blog on continuous product discovery, which I want to encourage you to check out. She came up with a way of how we can structure product discovery in the sense of having the outcome always in mind, then creating opportunities based on that outcome, and then running small potential solution experiments for each of the opportunities. And we're also using those opportunity solution trees quite a lot in our daily basis. And later on, I will give a bit more insight on how we're doing it and where do they fit in. Because they're a really good method to use. But for me, running a couple of these experimentations was okay because I love experimenting. But on the other side, what about strategy? And strategy was one part that I was missing from the opportunity solution trees, because it doesn't tell you, okay, which one do I need to start working on to make the next step? And while I was struggling with that problem, I was reading this book, Escaping the Build Trap, which is by Melissa Perry. And in the book, she's explaining something that she called product kata, which is just an adaptation for the product management world from the Toyota kata that you see on the left by Mike Rother, who was working at Toyota. And it's a method that explains, in my opinion, quite well on how you can also structure a product discovery. And that's going to be the main topic of this talk, that we're using the product kata in a very specific way, together with opportunity solution trees and a lot of different other things, to make our product discovery continuous and more structured. Again, in Zoom, as you see on the top right, I would love to hear if you ever heard about the product kata. If yes, share your experience with us. So let's have a look at product kata. And product kata is actually quite simple because it's split in 4 different phases. I go in more detail about each of the phases in a second, but you can actually say the first 3 phases are about strategy and analysis. And the 4th is about experimentation. And all of that together could become, in the end, your process for continuous product discovery, or your framework for continuous product discovery. So if we zoom out a bit, and don't freak out, that's part of the show. So if we zoom out and we look at this kind of continuous product discovery method and those 4 phases, we have one phase that is kind of the understanding the bigger picture, which we do on a quarterly or yearly basis. And then we have 3 other phases that we do on a more daily or weekly basis. And what we're doing in each of these phases, I'm going to share now. So let's zoom into the first phase. And the first phase, as I already mentioned, is all about the company goals, the product KPI, what's the future state, what's the vision of the company, so the big picture. And quite a lot of companies use OKRs for that, so objective key results, but it also works without, which are going to be set on a, most of the time, half a year basis, quarterly basis, maybe even once a year. So you need to understand where your company is heading towards. And at N26, that's a bit of an older picture from our Berlin office. in Klosterstraße. Took me a bit, but that's a bit of an older picture where our CEO shares like some data, and this is super important. Even being now 1,600 people in 3 different continents and 5 different offices, this is still happening. Like we still have 3 different meetings on a weekly basis where you can learn what the company is vision is, what the company's current KPI look like what's going on. That's the pulse of the company, I would say. So it's about vision, OKRs, main KPIs, and monthly on the hand. And if everybody understands where the company is heading, you already create kind of an understanding for the business side. So after we understood where the business wants to go, we go to the second phase, which is all about our products out there and our users. How do they currently interact with that product? What are their problems? How do we currently solve their problems? Like zooming in now, it really is about the user needs, about the data we have, how can we make use of that data, also about our competitors, like what's on the market, and framing that phase with what are our users doing brings us to the first picture, which is just a picture from the Barcelona office here, where we do have people in the room from product design, from user research, from marketing, from product management. And in this session, Josh in the bottom right is sharing a report where he did quite an extensive user research about a specific user problem. But we want to make sure that everybody understands the problem space, and we go quite deep on these kind of user research artifacts with quite a lot of people, even if it doesn't touch their piece of work very direct, but it makes sense to share and build this kind of common knowledge together. It also works working from home. We do the same thing now for a couple of months in home office. So we do have different sessions. This one shows a session with data analytics, where we meet once a week together with product marketing, product managers, whoever can bring something to the table or should be involved in these sessions is going to be included. And this is a session where we share our current data out there, like how do our products perform, what are our KPIs. And as you see on the top right of the image, it's like 12 people. So that's our segment, product people and marketing people. And it's all about learning. We're not talking about releasing a new feature or whatever. It's really just learning what is out there. How do people behave, and how do people, for example, in this case, upgrade? So another great method that we're using, because we have quite an extensive, or quite a lot of people who work in as customer agents. So customer service is a very, very important channel for us to get user feedback, because they're dealing with user problems on a daily basis. So on the one hand side, we created a help desk where internally they can create tickets, where we then have very visual what's currently the problem with our product, but also we're sending surveys to our CS agents to understand the specific problem from their point of view. We are shadowing customer service quite frequently to see how they're doing their work and how we can make that better as well. But also we're creating a beta user pool who can give us very direct feedback on how the product is performing. To go a step back a little bit, we are using Persona, where we have a very clear picture of who is our target user. Some other companies are using jobs to be done, for example, here, which is also quite a nice framework to get a better picture of who are the people we're building for. And for me, this is also part of understanding the user in the end. the user research team did a really, really great job when they put together videos and workshops where everybody who joins N26 need to go through that workshop to understand who are our users. Something we started a couple of months ago, which helped us quite a lot to also make more sense of the analytical data that we're having, and to see how the performance of our features are working, is kind of a living documentation. And documentation not in the sense of just putting a lot of screenshots on a page, but rather have them in a always changing sketch file or Figma file or whatever you want to use, Miro. Like, there is a lot of different things that you can use, but it helps a lot by communicating not only between us, but also what does the user currently see? Because in most cases, the people who are building the product have a different version of what the user in the end sees. For example, in our team, most of the people have a Spanish N26 account, but how do people in Greece have N26? How do people in Ireland have N26? So if there are differences, make them visible. So they're also visible when you do discovery. What we're using in the last couple of months as well, to make more learnings continuously, is also mapping out things. So on the left-hand side, you see a driver tree to a very specific problem. So the black box here it was really a black box because we had to learn a lot about it. That's kind of a goal we want to reach. And then we mapped out, like, who are the drivers that help us to achieve that goal? And the yellow ones were the ones that we said, okay, this is something we need to look deeper into. There is quite a nice book which is called Impact Mapping that you see on the right, which goes in a similar direction with mapping out different pillars on reaching a goal. So feel free to check that out as well, because it gives you a completely different view to the problem, because you map out everything that is connected to that problem. And then this is kind of a bonus one, and this is the screenshot I took here from Ichna. Ichna's Slack message is from my former company, where we were able to also let the team, the developer, talk to real users. I know it's not possible for every company, but if you can make it happen, let everyone in the team at one point talk to users and see that the users having problems firsthand. There are quite some nice books down here that help you also, if you're not a user researcher, on how you can structure those interviews, how you can talk to humans, so to say. Another question I would like you're participating on is if you have any other tools, methods, or similar in mind to find out more about user needs or the performance of existing features. So everything that you're using to find more about the products that are out there or your existing users, I would be more than happy to learn about those as well. So zooming out again, after we understood what our users currently doing and how our products are performing, plus we know where the company wants to go and we got our OKRs on a quarterly basis, we can combine those two, and then together with the team define what's the next goal, what's the next step we need to take and define to get our product or our users closer to reaching that goal and solving that user problem. And if we zoom in, it's really about the next target condition towards our OKRs achievement. And questions you want to answer here is like, for example, what is the goal? That's something you need to define in the very beginning. What is the goal we're trying to solve here? Then you need to understand where are we now in relation to that goal? What is the biggest problem or obstacle standing in the way of us reaching that goal? And then you go into a workshop mode where you say, how do I try to solve that problem? And then the most important one is hypothesize. What do we think is going to happen if we do X, Y, Z? And this is probably very close to the roadmap we said earlier. Instead of just putting out there a roadmap with already features defined, we talk about hypotheses here, or potential experiments we can run that bring us closer to the goal, rather than just, okay, we need to release that and we're fine. So how do we do that? Again, some impressions from our office in Barcelona, where we were running one of the kickoffs in the beginning of last year. So we did a customer journey mapping, where we outlined exactly, okay, what is the user experiencing in that specific flow? What goal do we want to solve? And where do we need to start looking at? And we had people flying in from Berlin, from like various different parts of the business. So we have business operations, we have CS, we have design, we have marketing. That specific problem was closely connected to our physical cards. So we had people from the cards team in Barcelona. But it really comes to bringing everyone together who can bring something to the table. And then you have this kickoff at that specific kickoff, we had it for a day, but we also did it in working from home mode, which works quite well too. We had it for a couple of hours. One suggestion, if you're doing it in a working from home environment, it needs to be very clearly defined on what's the outcome, and you need to run through that agenda. That's why I put in the agenda here. You need to make it very explicit, like what's the goal of that session, because people, if they're working from home, they're not less productive, but it's harder to keep their attention. So there always need to be some parts where you explain something, where you have experts like the data team or user researchers giving insight about the learnings we made in the second phase. And then you define together with all of your team members what's the next goal. And sorry, that was too fast. And we do this mainly together, because if you do it together in a kickoff, you will get very small amount of questions afterwards. Why are we doing that? Because people were coming up with the potential solutions together. It also works with like a very small team. If you have a specific topic and you want to work from home, we're not wearing black hoodies all the time, so the picture might be a bit misleading, but it also works with syncing with smaller groups during the week after the kickoff to make sure that like product design and user research here in that picture knows exactly what is expected until the next week, and how do we proceed. If you have the first goal defined, I'm usually going back to my development team, which also includes design and user research, and we start hypothesizing. We have a clear picture now of all user information. We have a clear picture on what's the next goal we want to achieve, and then we can, together with the team, create solution in form of hypotheses and create experiments. So everything that we're launching in experiments, if it's possible, to see how the feature we're launching changes the perception of users, changes their behavior, etc. Amazon is having a quite nice method, which are called Amazon memos, which we are trying in that session. So for example, Sergio here on the right is currently reading a brief. This helps quite a lot, because not most of the, like only some of the people from the development team are part of the second phase, because you can't have everyone in the room and it doesn't make sense. But you can summarize what you learned so far and what the common knowledge, or what's the knowledge about the problem already, in like a one-pager, and people read through that, and all of the people in the room start with the same, on the same basis, with the same knowledge. We were experimenting with it and it really works quite well. So I encourage you to also try it out. So after we have hypothesized and defined the next goal and the next possible experiment, we go into the phase which most people see as the real product discovery. where you do user research on this specific topic, where you do product experiments, put something in front of users. And so moving into the fourth phase, this is now the build, measure, learn cycle that we're trying to keep all the time. And coming back to the opportunity solution trees, this is where we make most sense of it. So we have the outcome of either phase 1 or 3, and we created the opportunities, the potential opportunities in form of how might we questions, how might we solve that problem in how might we questions, or also as hypotheses. And then we run experiments. And to make those experiments visible, you can either use the opportunity solution tree to see how it all fits together, but you can also come up with an experimentation backlog, which is similar to a development backlog, but it has items that you're working on, making sure that these things, before they go into development backlog, that you have proven that it's worth building them. So that's what you're calling an experimentation backlog. There's similar methods on how you can do experiments. One that might be quite famous is the sprint, the Google sprint, or as nicely described by Jake Knapp in Sprint, the book, which are 5 days of starting with a problem and then on Friday validating your first MVP, which works quite well, and I was using in my former company, but it's also quite time consuming and expensive, because you probably spend like 5 days in total on coming to a result. And to be able to show something to users, you need to block the whole team for these 5 days. So we said we need something more lightweight on how we can do experimentation. And in pre-Corona times, we had something that is called Feed Forward session, where we invite user on a monthly basis to our Barcelona office. And we are having like quite small sessions of like 15 minutes per user, where you just showed them a prototype. You were doing card sorting. You can bring designers and product people and developer in contact with real users. So that's a real picture. But it gave us the opportunity to get a very close connection with our users in the end. And as soon as we are going back to the office, I hope we're starting it again. But yeah, if you have the possibility, I would encourage you to set up something like this, where you invite users to your place and learn. And then I'm not going too much into detail about product experimentation today, but there is like a ton of different things that you can do. There are beta or internal releases to see first bugs. There are A/B experiments for like bigger flows, but also for smaller flows, with like just changing a button color or whatever. Whatever makes sense to your specific problem. If it's a factor test or usability test, there's a lot of books out there, a lot of talks that you can watch to learn more on how to run these experiments. Another question for the people participating on Zoom, what is your favorite experiment method, and what types of question can it answer? Not every experiment method works for every question that you want to answer. So I would be super interested in what types of questions you can answer with what types of experiment methods, and what's your favorite and learnings there. So zooming out, this could be kind of the setup of our continuous product discovery. And it looks quite clear and simple with 4 phases, and you kind of go through those circles on a regular basis, and you make learnings on the way. But if we're honest, in the end, it probably looks a bit more like this. It's still structured in a way and continuous, and it helps us to not forget about things, but it will be quite messy. And that's good, because you always need to react to what the current situation asks for. If you look at those 4 phases and the pictures I was sharing, in all of the 4 phases, you as a product person, you're the one responsible for letting people talk to each other, or talking to people to build a great product, or enable your team to be able to continuously product discover. So it's really your job as a product person, and I think that's the main part of our job, to enable that team to run product discovery. And then all together we can make ideation, design thinking, experimentation, we can make that a bigger part of our time. And we can make that continuously, and then we are definitely, I think we're building better products by that. Some learnings in the end I want to share that helped me over the last couple of years is that transparent alignment is always key. I said it in the middle somewhere, that to a kickoff, invite as many people as possible that can bring something valuable to the table, because if people are aligned, it's easier and you can get stuff done. Then the next one, and we had some examples as well, try to visualize as much as possible. If you have 3 people and talk about one specific thing, you might end up with 3 different things in their head. So if you visualize it, that takes away a lot of confusion, and you can focus on different things rather than making everyone understand what you're talking about. Then a very important one, don't trust a single experiment. You need to build up this kind of product sense over a couple of months, and you need to make learnings in very specific and very different parts to be able to have that trust, and also be able to say, okay, we're going in that direction. So not only because one experiment was successful for 1 week, we go that direction, but rather we want to combine a couple of different things to then build up our opinion about that. Something which should be a no-brainer, but it is hard, is talking to users on a regular basis. And even if you can't talk to them directly, read through social media. We, for example, do have a user feedback or product feedback Slack channel where social media team is posting everything they find on social media. So try to, even if you're not able to talk to them directly, try to get their voice in your mind as much as possible. And then kind of the bonus one, if it's possible, make your full team talk to users and let them make their own learnings as well. One more thing, it was mentioned in the beginning, we do have the PM library, which is at the moment a blog on Medium where we share book recommendations regarding product management, product design, and tech. And we have quite a lot of interesting people who share their book recommendations as well. We're also building our very own product at the moment, which is in beta state. So if you want to check that out, feel free to go to the pmlibrary.com/books. Send me your feedback, like tell me what you're missing, what you like, what you would like to do with books. Tell me about your problems regarding books or content and product management. I'm more than happy to hear about it. And as the last question before we go into a bit more of an open format, I would like to hear, what is your favorite product management, design, or leadership or tech related book, and why? So that's pretty much it from my side. Thank you very much for listening. Oh, Christoph, hi, I just saw your name. We worked together earlier. Hi. Handing over to Mirella now.
To you and the community.
I think your sound is a bit broken. Maybe it's just me, but.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, Mirella, your sound is breaking. Can't hear you.
All right, so I hope now it's a bit better. Yes, I'm really sorry about this. All right, so if you guys have questions, I suggest you type them in here and we can already take the next questions, and I'll also monitor for the people joining us via YouTube, as we have about 83 people watching there, and transfer the questions to you here, Alex.
Correct. I think there are some questions popped up now. Should I just pick one, or do you want to?
Oh yeah, you're the person who is answering.
Okay,
the
cool.
Cool.
So I'll just start from the top. So Sebastian wants to know, how do you align the next little goals with the bigger goals and increments and with the longer term strategy? Is that the sense of the quarterly phase one? That's a good question. And I think it really depends on the framing of the sessions you're having in those next goal defining sessions. You need to be very specific on what is the goal, what is the metric you want to change, what are the boundaries in which you operate. So it needs to be very clear to everyone that if we're building a mobile app, you can't come up with something completely different. So the framing and kind of the scoping of those sessions is super essential to define a proper next goal that you can act up, that you can work with. The next question is from Christoph. How is your team set up at the moment? Are you dividing between discovery and delivery? That's also a really good question. We kind of have it split in the sense of we run the model that the delivery part is like 80% managed by my tech lead, and 20% I need to make sure the stakeholders, together with BizOps and CS and legal and whoever is involved, that whatever we're releasing, when we release that everybody's ready, together with product marketing, that the comms are ready. So I'm kind of the 20% on the delivery part, but I'm not being a big part in how the feature is delivered. Like they need to build, I mean the tech team is responsible and has the ownership of building the feature. And the discovery part, I'm the one 80% responsible, but at one in some cases I need help from my tech lead, and I need help from people of the team. So they're doing 20% of their time also in discovery. That's probably about the core topic, the core team. If you look at stakeholders, for example, product marketing, operations, whoever you have as a stakeholder, we usually include them quite early in the process, as well as AML and security, which is working at a bank, a super important stakeholder. We involve them as early as possible, but always to an extent that it makes sense for them and for us. So the product team itself, as I said, is split between 80-20. But yeah, stakeholders always when we need them in that sense. I hope that answers your question. We have another one. How much important is to know analytics tools for a PM? That's something I was personally also struggling a bit in the last months, because like, do you as a product person need to be able to run queries? I think the answer is it depends. It comes to the point that if you have a person in the company that is dedicated to help you with these kind of questions, like data analytics or digital analytics, user analytics, however you want to call them, I think you need to make use of those people, and they can help you quite a lot. If you don't have those people, then you still have the same answers, and you still need to make the same learnings to have a to make good decisions. So you need to find those answers by yourself, and then you need to have skills to do queries and stuff. But I think in most companies at the moment, as far as I know, there is someone who could at least help you to understand the current data structure and databases. Okay, now I got a bit lost. There we go. Do you time box discoveries, or when do you decide you are ready to bring it live? That's a really good question. I try always to not time box discoveries, because I see discovery as a very constant process, and I don't want to talk about, hey, we're doing discovery today and tomorrow we're doing delivery. We never have, like, we don't have that kind of discussion in our team, because everything we're doing, if we get a bug report, we need to do discovery to see where does this bug occur, what people are affected, what users are affected. So this is already discovery. And discovery, in my opinion, is better described at trying to understand the current problem you're trying to solve, and then defining a first iteration which makes sense to test. And this could be for a bug, this could be for a bigger product, a project, whatever. So the discovery part is always there. It's never time box for us, because we do it until a point where we say, okay, now we feel like we are able to come up with a first step and the first proper experiment we can run. And then that discovery of the problem is over, but the discovery of if that experiment works is starting. So it's kind of an ongoing process. Wow, there are quite a couple of questions now.
Yes, the YouTube viewers have also posted a lot of questions, which I've synced here. If it helps, I could also read them and keep track of.
I think it's fine. We can do a couple of more. I would just go to the next one from Anne from YouTube. Adding on top of Jorge's question, how closely do you work with analytics during the continuous discovery process? I think that's an easy one. I showed that during the presentation, that we have a weekly session together with analytics, where they share dashboards or investigations they were doing for the whole membership segment. So we're working very closely with them together. And if I would need to put it in perspective on how much I talk to people in the company, I think my guy sitting in Berlin, working in analytics, Fabio, I talk to him like on a daily basis, and probably like one of the people I talk the most to. So yes, we include them a lot. What are your KPIs for discovery at squad level? Do you use input or output metrics? Not really sure if I understand that question correctly. So sorry if I skipped that one. Maybe we can have a follow-up on that. So Etienne, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. Julia on YouTube, how about discoveries which involve multiple teams, a shared feature that requires collaboration? Would you handle them the same as a team internal discovery? I would handle them the same, and we're currently having a couple of those shared topics, because at one point you always need to collaborate with other teams. So I usually get together with the product person, the designer, and the tech lead of the other team, plus the people from my team. And we kind of set up the kickoff, talk about who needs to be involved, who should be included from stakeholders. Do we need to prepare something before to get everyone on the same page? Do we need to visualize something to not start at the very beginning? We don't do much in the sense of we need to talk a lot on how we work together or these kind of things. We keep those parts very lean, and the teams need to figure that out themselves. But for the discovery part, we say, if you're taking part in that workshop, it's usually super structured. Like there is an agenda, we follow. And then it really doesn't matter if it's one team or two teams or three teams. It in the end, it just is probably one part more on the agenda where you say, okay, who is now doing the next steps and what is kind of the boundary between the teams and how are they connected. But other than that, in my experience, it works with multiple teams as well. For example, the picture I showed from the card discovery from Barcelona last year, there were like 5 teams included. And if you have representatives of each of the teams, that should be no problem. You mentioned jobs to be done. Is there a reason you're not using it? It's a good question. I don't know why we're not using it. I think it was just more like a conscious decision from the whole company to work with Persona. I know companies who work quite well with jobs to be done. Intercom, for example, is one. So if you want to learn something about jobs to be done, their blog is a really good resource on learning about it. But I'm not sure why we're not using it. Like we just decided to go with personas for now. Let me read real quick. How are then the successful ideas being moved to production and then being released for go live? Is it the beta team you mentioned that will validate the ideas? The whole team is validating the ideas to a certain extent. We need the developers to give feedback on how feasible is something to build. We need designers to come up with how would that look like and how is the user perceiving it, so the UX part of it. And you need the product people who need to bring in the business side and the user side. So validating those ideas together should be a team sport rather than just me bringing some requirements into the team. We, especially in my team, we're running these refinement sessions every day for 20 minutes. So after stand up every day, we have a session where everybody can bring a topic to the team. So we also discuss quite technical tickets there, and everybody's open to leave if it's not helpful for them or they can't bring something to the table. But this would be the part where we say, okay, this is now something we would look more into. And it doesn't really depend if we're just giving a quick intro into an epic sized story, if it's just talking about a bug or something that we learned. But what I'm trying always to do is bringing the tickets from discovery as early as possible into those sessions, and then getting a first kind of feeling of the team, what they think about the idea, what we need to discover also on the technical side to be able to make a better judgment. But this is kind of the threshold. As soon as a ticket made it to that meeting, it's usually something that we think we should look at. What about if we do 2 more, and then I'm more than happy to answer them after. So Philoda, I hope I pronounce your name right. I'm a PM in charge of the onboarding. I find it hard to find users that are willing to be interviewed as I don't want to negatively impact their first experience. What are your advices? I think, again, it really depends on what you want to learn from those interviews. And then it doesn't need to be always talking to those users. It could also be that you put in a quick form, like just one question. Hey, why did you sign up? What's the reason why you're signing up? Or after they have finished the onboarding, just saying, hey, how did you like the onboarding? Or send an email. Some people are open to then answer more questions. So you can include a link where they can sign up for this kind of beta group, or like make the first discussion with them about the product. But I think there's always people who are more than happy to share their experience. And most of the time, the people who had a bad experience are more open to share, which is quite a good thing for us product managers, because then we learn what problems we're currently not solving. But yeah, I think it really depends on the type of question you want to answer. And then you can put in a different kind of experiment. Cool. Maybe the last question. How do you see continuous discovery being possible for a product with large corporate user base, but legacy tech architecture? Not yet the proper microservice-based architecture. That's a good one, and a quite challenging one where I'm probably not the best person who can give advice to, because I never worked at a company like this. But I can try. I think there is still a lot of discovery you can do without writing one line of code. So even if you have a large corporate user base and everything is legacy, and if you touch something, everything breaks, you can still validate without writing code. Like there is a lot of great resource out there on how you do these kind of experiments, being it a fake email or like a fake door email, or doing something on social media where you see super early if or super fast if people are interested in XYZ. But then also just getting in contact with those users. Like just because the product itself is hard to change, you can still talk to the users. You can invite them and see what they're currently experiencing and what their problems are. So the bigger the company and the more corporate, I think the more learning and discovery you need to do before writing one line of code. That would be my advice. Cool. That was the last question. I'll hope the others are fine if I'm skipping those, just to not go over time.
If you have more time, Alex, feel free. Alternatively, we could also end the stream officially and invite the people who want to stay for an informal hangout that is not recorded on YouTube to do so. So up
we
to
can
you.
do that if that's fine. Yeah, let's
right.
stop here and then we can have a discussion with a bit more voices than just mine.
All right, cool. Then I will post our Zoom link on YouTube in case someone wants to join from there. And just a second. I'm doing it right now. All right, and I will now end the YouTube stream.